There's both pros and cons of engaging a professional to represent you at auction. And in today's episode, we're going to be unpacking the pros and cons of engaging a sales agent or a buyer's agent to represent you here in Brisbane. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Brisbane Property Podcast with your hosts, Melinda and Scott Jennison.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Brisbane Property Podcast with Scott and Melinda Jennison.
Welcome back, everybody, and we're actually pretty excited about this episode. We are going to be unpacking all of the pros and cons of engaging an expert to assist you when bidding at auction, especially here in Brisbane. And of course, when we say an expert, that is someone that is trained in real estate practices. Now, of course, there are registered buyer's agents who can represent you independently, but a default option for a lot of buyers is actually to engage a sales agent who may be affiliated in some way with the vendor or the sales campaign. So today, the purpose of this podcast is to really unpack the pros and cons of both approaches for anybody that is a property buyer so that they can really understand who's representing who and who has the other's interests in front of mind.
Yeah, I think the best way maybe to start off with is probably start off with a bit of an example. Last weekend we attended in-room auctions here in Brisbane. We were bidding on behalf of a client, someone that engaged us to do the auction bidding on their behalf. Multiple properties. It's all action stations. So the auctioneers usually talk really fast. I can't do what they do, but they talk fast. They're trying to get engagement. They're trying to get people moving. They're trying to get the bids happening. Generally, it happens pretty fast. You don't have a lot of time to think. A comment literally from the client that we helped, and we purchased the property for them, and they were ecstatic. They said, you've changed our life. I couldn't have done it. It was too stressful. I didn't know what was happening. It was moving too fast. You see the auction when it's actually happening and there's agents running around the room with phones, with earpieces in, talking, and there's just so much happening in a room at that time that unless you actually do it day in, day out, like we do, it can be stressful for people to see this. For us, obviously, we do it all the time. We talk to the agents. We know them, but we also are there to do a job when we do it for a client, and it's not as stressful. There's no emotion. It's doing a job. So it gives you a bit of an idea of what we sort of obviously do and what we did last weekend to take that stress away from a client. And obviously today we're going to discuss all different scenarios, I guess, on auctions, on how people do it and why they do it and what you can do.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good example to lead with, Scott, because as we all know, as property buyers, a lot of people do feel like they want to control the spending of their money, and that's absolutely understandable. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars when it comes to purchasing property, and the most important thing is that you don't overpay and you don't get caught up in the hype of an auction. And of course, if you have the temperament and the headspace and if you're not stressed by those environments, and representing yourself could be an option available to you. I feel like our client on Saturday, and like many clients that we've represented at auction, sometimes having professional representation enables you to have a much higher level of confidence. Someone who understands the rules of engagement at an auction, who understands the legislation around what you can do and what you cannot do at auction, what's legal, what's not legal, why a certain process might be happening or a certain stage in the auction might be playing out. If you know what happens and you're familiar with what happens, then it's much less stressful. But if you're green and you're just unsure, sometimes it is more favorable for you to seek out professional representation. And it is a reason why a lot of bidders or a lot of property buyers do turn to either sales agents or buyer's agents to help them. And I say either sales agents or buyer's agents because at a lot of auctions that we attend, when we are professionally representing a buyer, we also see sales agents representing other buyers. Usually the sales agents are on the phone and their buyers are remote, but this is not uncommon, especially here in Brisbane. It happens a lot. So today we're going to unpack the pros and cons of engaging someone independent like a buyer's agent versus engaging a sales agent, especially if that sales agent might be affiliated with the vendor's sales agent, that is the seller who is actually selling that property.
Yeah, and obviously as we go through this, all our friendly agents that we do know, we're not putting everyone into the same basket. We're just giving a broad overview of what can happen in general, or some things that could happen. It's not targeting agents or anything like that. So we have a really good relationship with agents, and obviously that's how we work with our clients. So if we look at it initially, and we just say, as you touched on, a buyer looking to buy a property, and they've obviously talked to the real estate agent, the agent that's marketing the property, and has interest, but they actually can't make it. They're interstate, they're away, they're busy, whatever. So
Or they're nervous, unsure.
Yep. So they ask the agent if they could do the bidding on their behalf, or they get one of their associates to be on the phone to do the bidding on their behalf. Biggest thing I'd probably look at there is, and I guess I'll start it straight off with, the agent that is selling the property is engaged by the vendor. So their best interest is basically they're working for the vendor to get the highest price that they possibly can to sell that property. So I probably look at that and think, wow, is there any sort of conflict of interest?
Yeah, look, and that's something that I think that buyers really need to assess. Is there a conflict of interest in engaging a sales agent? Now, in most cases, sales agents will not charge a buyer for this particular service. So obviously that's some advantage to a buyer in that it's a free service. A lot of the time we actually see the buyer who may be actually on the phone, on the other end of the phone, and the agent might be, speaking to them about what's happening, seeking out instructions, asking for, further details. And I think that process alone, like if you are on the phone to a sales agent during an auction and you're not there physically at the property or in the room where the auction is taking place, you are missing so much detail. You are missing so much information around who else is bidding, how many other bidders are in the room, and you are relying on the information that you're receiving from the person that you're speaking to. So I feel like there is also a lack of transparency. By being physically present, you pick up so many more cues around what's actually happening at an auction. When we're at auctions, for example, we can physically see the competition that we may be bidding against. We can also physically see when body movements change, which may indicate that buyers are starting to hurt, and conversations might be happening between a husband and wife team, as an example. That gives us as professional bidders an indication of where they might be up to in terms of their bid limit. You don't see any of that if you're actually on the other end of a phone. You don't see that, and you're not likely to be given that information if it's a sales agent that's representing you. It's very likely that you will receive information about what the auctioneer is asking for, who's holding the highest bid, but it's all of those physical cues that you may be missing out on, which can be hugely beneficial for you as a buyer, and therefore can work to your detriment if it's not part of the assessment that you're making in order to increase a bid.
Yeah, it gives you a bit of an idea. Just touching on that, reading the crowds, seeing how people are reacting, seeing what they're bidding, seeing their conversations, just reading their body language, seeing how many people are registered to bid, how many people are actually bidding, how they're bidding, all those types of things. And we do a lot of training with some of the best auctioneers that are going around. We do training with them in-house here at Streamline. So we get an understanding of how the auctioneer works, how the auctioneer talks. When you're on the phone, you don't see any of that. You will literally you're on a phone call and you're getting told, oh, the auctioneer wants this bid, or the auctioneer wants this. Are you prepared to bid more? Yeah, that's the conversations that you'll hear. You don't hear other people talking. You don't see other people's body language. And I think that's a really, really big thing. I remember when COVID was on and online auctions were all happening. And to be honest, I wasn't a real fan of it because they would say, no one can be in the room. We're doing them separately and it's all online. You just don't get to see people. Having them on site, having them in room where you can actually go in room, that's a different story. You can read a crowd. You can see how people are reacting and how people are behaving.
Yeah. And of course, if you lack a level of transparency, there's the risk of overbidding. There's the risk of being paying a price that you otherwise may not have had to have paid, and also just bidding in increments that may be too large for the situation that's unplaying or unfolding in front of you. So, of course, an auctioneer will always ask for bids, and if you're being represented by someone who's completely independent, who also knows and understands the legislation around what can and can't happen, you can actually alter and change what bid increments you may be using, as opposed to just giving what an auctioneer may be asking for. Well, if you're on the phone and you don't know those things, and a sales agent may not be willing to share that information with you. So, having that independent representation can often work to your advantage. And I'm not saying, and I'm not suggesting that there's not some sales agents in and around Brisbane that do the right thing when they are representing buyers. But I can guarantee we've seen many sales agents do the wrong thing when representing buyers. And that's the reason for this podcast, to make buyers aware of the pros and the cons of affiliating or working with sales agents versus buyers agents if you're looking at getting professional representation.
I guess one other thing is when you've got an agent or a co-agent or someone on the phone and they're saying the auctioneer's after this or the auctioneer's wanting this, just the other thing to remember is the auctioneer is engaged by the agent. So the auctioneer and the agent are trying to do the best thing for their vendor, who's paying them perfectly good money to actually sell the property at the best price they can. So they're both working for the vendor to get that top dollar that they can get and sell it as quick as possibly, and nice and clean as well as they can for their vendor, because that's the person that's paying them to sell the property.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to put it out there. There can be legal and ethical implications. So, unfortunately, whilst it is illegal, we have witnessed phantom bidding or fake bidding take place at auctions here in Brisbane. And, we don't like it when we see it, and we'd call it out if we saw it at an auction that we were participating in, that's for sure. You won't have any transparency around that if you're on the phone, not there physically seeing who else is bidding as well. So it is so important to ensure that, you've got full visibility over everything that's going on at the auction.
I think one thing probably touching on the financial side of things, obviously you don't want to be overpaying. You don't want to just listen and say, oh, auctioneer wants this is how we're going to bid, and you've gone up and up and up. And obviously the risk of overpaying on that side of things. Having that independent type of help will minimize that sort of risk as well. The other thing obviously is instructions, giving clear instructions to the person that's actually bidding for you.
Yeah. And look, I think that, if someone is bidding on your behalf, you're giving them authority to bid, but giving verbal instructions can present a level of risk. So if you are going to engage someone, whether that's a sales agent or a buyer's agent, I'd always recommend having clear written instructions in terms of, the amount that someone's legally allowed to pay. And potentially there's other instructions that you may give in writing. And then that person's going to be legally bound to following the instructions that you've provided. And it provides a level of, certainty that you're going to be looked after and that your best interests are going to be kept at heart. Of course, it's always, if you're receiving something for free, if there's a service that you're getting and you're not paying for it, someone's paying for the time for that person. So, as a sales agent, if they are part of the agency that's selling that property, it's likely that they're working in conjunction with that sales agent to obviously get the best price for the property. Or alternatively, they might be assisting you to bid so that they can get the listing for your property. And then that's going to put them in a better position to sell your home when your property becomes available for sale. So there's always a motivation behind that. And we see no problem, with agents offering their time for those reasons, as long as ethically they do have the buyer's interests at the forefront.
I guess one big thing that we could touch on here is probably getting caught up in the emotion. If you're on the phone and and you've seen this property that you've fallen in love with and you really want to buy the property. We've seen it so many times, not just someone using an agent to bid on their behalf, but when you're on the phone and you're getting that, do you want another 1,000? Do you want to go again? Do you want to go that? You've got that pressure. You're actually under the pressure to make that decision really quick. And you might say, no, I don't. And you'll regret your decision later on if you haven't actually stretched a little bit to actually buy that property. But you might also stretch a bit more than what you're actually comfortable to do, and you've overcommitted because of that emotion side of things, that you're caught up in all of the hype and all the excitement because you're on the phone. Even if you're not on the phone, I mean, I've seen examples at some auctions where you turn up and the family's there, they got the kids and the kids are in love with the house and they're tapping dad on the shoulder saying, "Come on, dad, buy it. I need it. Just buy it. We want to live here." That's tough. Just to see that, and you can really see that emotion. They're the sort of things you don't see if you're on the phone either. Okay, so seeing those sort of things, you can see that, wow, these guys are really desperate to buy it.
And obviously there's a lot of reasons or factors that might cause a buyer to be represented by a sales agent, and I think that the first thing that comes to mind, and if people are wanting to step away from the bidding themselves, but they may not be aware that the service of an independent buyer's agent actually exists. So I feel like there's still somewhat a lack of awareness about the services that a buyer's agent can actually offer. People sometimes don't know that a buyer's agent service can be as simple as being engaged to bid at a single auction. That is part of the scope, and most buyer's agents will offer that as a service. I will say that not all buyer's agents are going to be as experienced as others in terms of their ability to represent the buyer in a professional way. So always, regardless of whether you're being represented by a sales agent or a buyer's agent, it is important to do your due diligence. But a lack of awareness, I think, is one of the reasons why people would turn to a sales agent, because they don't actually know that buyer's agents exist as an independent authority to be able to represent a buyer. And then it does take away that conflict of interest that might exist between a sales agent and their vendor.
Yeah, I think that perceived cost is something that people make an inquiry. If you're unsure and you don't want to have that stress and that hanging over your head, just make some inquiries. Phone around a little bit and just say, look, how much does it cost to get an independent person to come and bid on my behalf? What's your experience? Do you do this? And have a look at it. I mean, one of the agents on the weekend when we bought actually came up to us and said, congratulations, that was fantastic. You've made some upset people over there, and maybe you need to help them. That's, they're the sort of things that people don't understand. But just make an inquiry, see what that cost is. I guess the other thing they might choose an agent to do is the trust side of it. They might trust them because they've sold another property, or they might be looking to say, hey, when you bought that, we'll sell with you. So there is some trust there, and that's probably another reason why some buyers will go with a sales agent.
Of course, and there's many very established sales agents that have built their brand in a local area, and people really feel that they can provide a service that is going to be professional, and that's absolutely acceptable as long as the items that we've discussed have been addressed with the sales agent, so that everybody understands who's representing who's paying who, and that becomes very transparent. I think that it's also quite convenient for people, if they know that they're not going to be available at the time of the auction. Of course, the sales agent is going to provide a solution for them, and that solution is more than likely going to be an in-house bidder, one of the co-agents or someone else from the agency who's going to be able to represent that buyer by having them on the phone. And of course, that's usually provided as a free service, so it's not going to cost that buyer anything to be represented. And just for some comparison's sake, depending on the level of service, but to engage a buyer's agent to bid under your instructions, the cost is well under $1,000. So we're not talking a huge amount of money, and potentially at auction that can save buyers thousands of dollars because of the way that they can bid professionally on their behalf and avoid overpaying and change those bid increments and negotiate professionally if the property doesn't quite reach reserve. So there's thousands of dollars of savings for a very small investment. And of course, buyer's agents can also be engaged for a small sum more to do all of the due diligence and even provide price guidance to ensure that if you have found something that's going to be the perfect match, you can get some professional input on a single property basis. So a lot of people think buyer's agents, you have to engage them to do a full search. That's definitely, the largest portion of clients that, we certainly would partner with, but we do offer those single engagements for bidders to be represented subject to our availability, and also, completing due diligence and pricing on a single property to then follow through to auction is something else that buyer's agents often offer to clients to help them and serve them and get the best outcome for them.
I guess another one is obviously limited access to buyer's agents. So, that if there's no buyer's agents in your area, or there's limited numbers of those independent agents to be able to engage, there's a reason that they'll probably either do it themselves or they will use a sales agent. And also the timeframes. If they're working on very tight timeframes and they haven't got organised and ready to go, obviously working with the sales agent, the vendor sales agent, again, convenience, and be able to do it really quick.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a lot of very confident buyers out there in the market, and they just choose not to attend an auction, but they're happy to be on the phone. And I think that, we've already outlined some of the lack of transparency that can occur if you're not physically there, or if you don't have someone independent physically there at the auction. But we understand, and we see a lot of buyers who are confident buyers, but they choose not to be there for whatever reason, and they'll be the ones on the phone to the sales agents. So that's a reason why some people would choose to work with a sales agent. It's no cost. They may be, on the football field or the sideline, watching their kids, or at the netball courts, and, be confident enough to provide instructions to an agent that's not going to cost them any money. It's just having the clarity and the instructions up front that would need to be addressed.
Obviously, relationships, as we mentioned, you could have a prior relationship with the agents, and simple. It's some people just look at it and say, well, it's just simple, I'll just use them, as opposed to engaging somebody else to help me on my behalf. So there's a couple of reasons, obviously, people do that. And I guess the other one, then, if we step across to engaging somebody, so if you were to look to engage a buyer's agent to work on your behalf and bid for you at auction.
Yeah, look, I think that we'd like to sort of just run through, why that might be an advantage to you as a property buyer compared to representing yourself or engaging a sales agent to represent you and having them on the phone on your behalf. Now, of course, a buyer's agent is completely independent, so they have no relationship with the vendor. They're not paid by the vendor. They're actually paid independently by the buyer. So there's actually no reason why there would be any conflict of interest if you're engaging a buyer's agent to represent you. So it's completely unbiased representation. And they would work solely for you exclusively and keep your best interests at heart all the time. So it's there's no divided loyalties by engaging someone completely independent.
Obviously, as we go through these things, and we are buyers agents, and people might just think, it's a bit of a sales pitch to get people to come and help you engage at auction. It's just making people aware. That's the idea of this episode, is to make you aware of the pros, the cons, the plus, the minuses in how you do it. The big reason that we're probably doing this is to make people aware and avoid making mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest reason we're talking about this. And we're just trying to put it out there to people to say, it's okay if you want to do it by yourself. That's okay. If you want to engage an agent to bid on your behalf, that's okay. If you want to get a buyer's agent to do it with you, that's okay. It's just giving you the options, giving you the information so you can think about it, because it's a big investment when you start to purchase either an investment property or buy a home.
I think it just makes you aware so that you know what conversations to have before you head into that auction. And that's something that we always advocate for, best practice, and helping all of our listeners with buyer tips.
Yep. So I guess the next one is expert negotiators. I mean, buyers agent, as I said earlier, we're trained. That is our skill set. We do it every day. We buy properties all the time for people, and that is our job. So having that expert negotiation side of it, when you get, say, for example, in an auction and you're holding the bid and they say, come into the room and we'll have a chat. For some people, that is just so stressful to be taken away to talk with an auctioneer or a sales agent, and you're in a negotiation. As professional buyers agents, that's just a part of the job. You are negotiating, and I think having that experience is very important.
And I think it is interesting because experience does matter. And I think, with more than 400 transactions that we have been a part of here at Streamline Property Buyers over many, many years, that's a lot of negotiation and or auction bidding that our team have been involved in. And the more you do something, we all know, the better you become. So we've certainly, become experts in this field over many years. And of course, it's not just about doing it. It's also about expert training to ensure that your skills remain sharp and evolve as the industry evolves as well.
Market knowledge, that's another thing. Understanding the market, helping the client understand where you see value, what's the market doing, how things are moving. It just gives the confidence and the informed decisions being made by the buyer. It helps them with a bit more confidence that way.
Yep.
So that when you're actually engaging someone to bid on your behalf, you've got that reassurance of market knowledge. And I think that's really important when it comes down to an independent person helping as well.
Yeah, of course, market intel helps you to determine where is the right price for you to set the bid limit. What you don't want to do is miss out by an amount that you would have otherwise paid. That can be really disappointing for you if someone else has paid $2,000 or $3,000 more and you think after the auction, damn, I really would have and should have paid that additional amount, but my emotions got in the way, or I just felt so stressed, or I didn't quite know, I was too nervous to think about where things were up to. So having the ability to talk through with a professional up front, and that's definitely something that's, part of an auction bidding service. It's not just turn up on the day and have your instructions. There's a preparation meeting that would happen, especially with our team, where we talk through, well, how do we set this bid limit? What are some tips that we would give you in setting the bid limit? What's the market doing in this area? And what direction is the market moving? And how many buyers are you going to or likely to be competing with at auction? Because all of these, or the answers to all of these questions, will help to determine the bidding strategy that a buyer's agent might use on auction day. But the most important thing, and this often comes up in that auction preparation meeting, but certainly on auction day, is the emotional detachment that a buyer's agent will have to the whole process. On Saturday, when Scott told the story at the beginning of this podcast of the buyer that we had represented, at the completion of the auction, she was really emotional because she was so stressed and anxious about the whole process. And yet we'd really, been able to do the job in a way that was calm and professional. And she just said, there is no way I could have ever done what you just did. Thank you so much. Now, there's nothing better for us than that moment, when you've changed someone's life, as Scott spoke about, because for us it's work and it's business and this is what we do day in, day out. But for others, this is a huge commitment, and bidding at auction is a highly, stressful situation for people that just aren't sure and don't know, and they're not familiar with that process. So having someone that's completely emotionally detached, but also really understands, the rules and the regulations around auctions and how they are to work, it really does assist a buyer who's a little bit nervous otherwise.
I think it helps when you enjoy them too. We love doing that. We love helping people. We love doing the auctions. It's actually, as we said, it's for us, it's a job. There's no emotion, but at the end of it, if you've helped someone like that and changed their life, there is emotion. You feel really proud that you've done that to be able to help somebody. Time, stress, those sort of things, saving. Look, as we've said so many times, it can be very, very stressful. People have busy lives. You can get on with doing your work, going on your holiday, going to watch kids play sport, all those sort of things. It's going to save you time. It's going to save you stress. So obviously engaging someone like that will take that away.
Yeah, and as I said, also there can be different levels of engagement. And if you choose a package that includes pricing and due diligence, you'll know that there's going to be no stone left unturned. All of your interests will be protected as a buyer. And of course, still in Queensland, the disclosure laws are minimal. They are changing, but at this stage, it is buyer beware. It is caveat emptor. You need to actually be aware of what you're buying, and all of that research needs to be done upfront, because at auction, you are buying completely unconditional. There's no way you can get out of an auction contract. So having an independent professional on your side to ensure that you've ticked all the boxes and you've done all of the research that you need to do. And there's going to be no surprises post-purchase. Gives you a level of peace of mind that you won't otherwise have, because you may not know what you don't know. And that's one of the biggest concerns or things that we see with buyers, even more experienced buyers that may have already purchased 1 or 2 properties. There's still aha moments, and they're like, I didn't even think of that. Oh, I'm glad you're doing that for me. Thank you so much, because I wouldn't have even thought of performing that search. And this is the level of assurance that a buyer's agent can provide.
Yeah, a lot of that due diligence that people can engage with, as we said, building and pest inspections, legal checks. How many times you might get told that, it's just a standard REIQ contract, but yet there's some clauses that are taken out. So, yeah, as you said, being aware for the potential risk on that side of thing is very, very important. Obviously, then if you do purchase a property, there's other things that the buyer's agent side of things can help you with. So the post-auction assistance, when you stepping you through the whole process of paying the deposits and all those types of things, right through to the settlement side of it.
Yeah. So look, I think that's helped to provide some pros and cons on different approaches, different people, professionals that you may or may not choose to engage. Some of the pros and cons of both. Yes, using a sales agent will potentially cost you nothing. We have highlighted some of the risks that you may encounter, and I'm not suggesting at all that that's going to be the case with any engagement that you do have. But we've also highlighted some of the pros and cons of also partnering with a buyer's agent. Yes, there is a cost. That's going to be an investment up front. However, there's also other benefits. And one of them that we didn't touch on, but I think is one of the most critical advantages of partnering with a buyer's agent is just that bid strategy. How do we go about approaching the auction based on the circumstances that we've been presented with, and how do we be agile in an auction and react, but react very quickly given the circumstances that are unfolding in front of us. And I don't think that there's, any other professional that you could engage that will have the same ability to represent you in an agile way in that high stress environment. So, yeah.
I think we've covered a fair bit there. Look, the biggest thing I suppose there is just to be aware. It's, as we said, auctions. And I would probably say now it is, and I've talked about this before, auctions are becoming more common here in Brisbane. We never previously were over the years, but more and more auctions are happening. They're selling. So if you're interested in property and it will probably sell, you need to be prepared to bid or get someone to bid for you. So good luck with that. If people are interested in chatting, we're happy to take inquiries and chat more about it. I will let Melinda wrap it up as we normally do. It's been great talking from sunny, fresh, cool, cold Brisbane, I'll call it at the moment. I will talk again next week, and I'll let Melinda wrap it up. Thanks very much for listening, and bye for now.
As always, we do hope you have enjoyed this episode all about auction bidding in Brisbane. If you've enjoyed the episode and you know someone that's planning to bid at auction in the near future, share the episode with them. We would really encourage you to help them to understand pros and cons of engaging professionals on their behalf. As always, if you've enjoyed the episode, please leave us a review, and we look forward to speaking with you again next week. Bye for now.